This is my 1-year review of the Blazar Remus Anamorphic Lenses, but it's not the kind you're expecting. We live in a world of sponsored videos, cinematic B-roll, and comment sections filled with the words game changer. A world where the algorithm doesn't just recommend, it recruits. It's a system built to make you want gear before you even know what it does. That's the Matrix. That's YouTube. So let me offer you a choice. In this hand, your basic spherical lens, safe, predictable, rectilinear reality. In this one, the Remus, flare heavy, distorted, seductive. You pick the spherical lens and this video ends. You go back to your kit lens and believe whatever the comments tell you. But you pick the Remus, and I'll show you just how deep the lens flares go. Welcome to the review. It's crazy to think that it has just been over a year since I was influenced in a way that I have never been influenced before in my life. The notion of budget anamorphic lenses wasn't anything new, but to have a company give you a full kit at the price of these lenses was a little unheard of. Companies like Subaru and others were dropping one-off anamorphic lenses, but not giving you a fully defined kit for such an amazing price. And with the help of creators like Cam Mackey and Kofi and others, which undoubtedly are friends of mine, I found myself influenced to pick up this kit. Now, a few things happened. First, a year ago, these lenses were almost impossible to get your hands on. Like many others, I put in my order, just like everyone else, through B&H, and had to wait months before the lenses actually arrived at my door. And the second they did, I couldn't wait to unbox them and get them out and actually start shooting with them. It was, in fact, my first actual set of anamorphic lenses because, let's be honest, the price. However, when I bought these lenses, I had no idea what was on the horizon. Not only did I buy these lenses, and then shortly after, I found out that this was the A set. An even better set was coming out, the B set. But then they also started releasing additional anamorphic options, such as 2x anamorphics, the Mantis system, and even the new small up-and-coming Beetle. And it wasn't just Blazar jumping into the anamorphic budget lens category. Other manufacturers and brands started jumping in too. And so quickly, if I'm being honest, I felt like maybe I had made a bad decision. Maybe I bought the wrong set of lenses, but it was too late. I had already ordered them. I bought them, they were here. So now I had to try to get the most out of them. And that's where I started to shoot with them. And the first thing I quickly realized was that these lenses have a look. Now, let's be real. The whole reason why most people pick up anamorphic lenses is because they are looking for that anamorphic look. They want these streaks. They want the wide angle aspect ratio. They want the oval bokeh. They are trying to emulate the images that they see in the world of cinema. And I am 100% guilty of wanting these lenses for the exact same reason. But I also wanted these lenses because they felt like the perfect owner-operator set of lenses. It would allow me to own a set of anamorphics so that if a project came up and I could absolutely get that look, I'd be able to use these lenses. But on top of that, because of the price point, they were a set that I could purchase and practice and learn how to use anamorphic in the right conditions. Because shooting anamorphic is a different experience to shooting spherical. The first thing I'll say when it came to the look out of these lenses is that it is a very distinct look. I mean, to say that these lenses are clean would just be a complete lie. These lenses are dirty, but in all the right ways. I mean, they give you that character. They give you a look that is distinctly different from your spherical lenses, which is ultimately the reason why I purchased them. You know, when you shoot with these lenses and you actually use them like outdoors, like we did a shoot in Sunset and we were shooting with skateboarders, you get a very unique look. However, I will say there are some limitations when it comes to that look. First off is that these lenses are not very sharp in the edges, which means if you're framing someone not in the center of the frame, trying to pull focus can be a little bit of a challenge. In fact, I actually found that with some of these lenses, the 100 in particular, trying to find critical sharp focus was just a challenge in general. On top of that, once you actually had your subject sort of backlit, you lost a little bit of contrast, which not only then made it even more difficult to pull focus, but it actually got you into a place of really having to rely on focusing on the distance and ensuring that you were actually nailing something that, roughly for the most part, looked like it was going to be in focus. Now that said, I have to say that the images out of these lenses look absolutely stellar. I mean, the first time I actually ever shot with these lenses, I actually took them to a CrossFit competition, and unfortunately, it was raining the entire time. Now, most people would take that as a sign to take their camera and go put it up, or to definitely use something to cover their lenses, but I don't care. I kind of just rolled the dice and let it fly. And what I found was that even using these lenses outdoors in the elements, they still stacked up. I didn't run into any issues with getting water on the lenses or have any problems in that area. I'm not sure if these lenses are technically considered weather sealed, but I will say that even though I used them in a pretty harsh environment, they still held up and I got some amazing shots out of it. But that is one of the first places I found that pulling focus on them can be a little challenging, especially if you're shooting them wide open. Now, another challenge that many people may run into is the whole de-squeezing aspect. As I mentioned, this was my first set of anamorphic lenses. And so over the year, I had to figure out, depending on what camera I was using, how I would go about monitoring my image. Now, the easiest way to do this is to just purchase an external monitor that has a de-squeeze feature. Now, I have reviewed a few different monitors on the channel that all offer this option. And quite honestly, it's not a huge burden, but it is an additional expense that you may want to consider. Very few mirrorless cameras will give you the ability to de-squeeze in camera. Lumix is one of the only ones that I actually know of that can do it. However, I will say that getting that image de-squeezed is essential, because if you cannot see what your final image is going to look like, you will miss minor things, not only critical focus, but also critical framing. So I do recommend getting a monitor that allows you to do that, and then you'll be able to get the shots that you're looking for. Now, when we start talking about the look, another thing that immediately pops up is the bokeh. Shooting this in a few different scenarios, you definitely get a chance to see some of that oval bokeh start to work its way in. One of my favorite examples where I got a chance to really see some of that oval bokeh come into play was when I was shooting a mini doc with a BMX bike rider. Looking at the background, you can see all of the swirly oval bokeh, which just looks absolutely beautiful. But not only does it come in handy when you're shooting the actual interview, but also in the B-roll. Throughout this entire project, I was switching between all three of my lenses, the 100, the 65, and the 45. And I was getting a very similar look out of all three. I will say that the 100, obviously because of the compression, is going to give you a little bit more of that pop from the bokeh. But I will say that overall, all these lenses held up really well, even when shooting across systems, because for that shoot in particular, I actually shot my A camera with the red Komodo X, and then my B camera was actually the Z8. Now, if I'm being fully honest here, one of the other main reasons why I picked up these lenses was because I was looking for a little bit of inspiration and motivation to shoot a film. I know I'm not the only person guilty of this, of buying a piece of gear because of aspirations of what you hope to do with said gear, but you actually haven't done what's necessary to ensure that you're actually going to get that thing done. Well, that's not good advice. Don't do what I did, but I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I bought these lenses with the hopes that they would sort of motivate me and inspire me to shoot a film. And last December, I actually got a chance to do just that. Last December, we shot a short film on these lenses, and I was incredibly excited to do that. We shot the entire short film on a red V-Raptor, and we shot them with these lenses. And I have to say, the images look absolutely stellar. Now, this film has not been officially released yet, and so I have to be very cautious about what I can actually show from it, because the plan is to, well, not the plan, we've already actually submitted this film into a few different festivals, and so there's like weird rules about that. But I can tell you guys that some of the images that came out of this film were absolutely beautiful, and it was because of these lenses. It definitely made me feel like I had that Hollywood style look. Now, let's be very transparent here. Yes, we shot it with the Red V Raptor, and then yes, we put budget lenses on it. But I have to say, still, with all that being said, the actual shots looked beautiful, which for me, as a DP and the DP on this project, was the thing I was ultimately looking to test, but then to also see what it was like to use these lenses in a film production workflow. Now, throughout this review, I've been showing you a lot of footage from these lenses and how I've actually been able to use them to craft the images that I've been ultimately searching to do in the world of anamorphic. But it wouldn't be fair for me to make this review if I didn't talk about some of the challenges that I ran into with these lenses. I've sort of alluded to it earlier, but getting critical focus with these lenses can be a little bit of a challenge. When you're shooting with any of these lenses wide open, it's very hard to actually see when your subject is fully in focus. And regardless to if you're using the DJI LiDAR system or you're actually using a AC to help you pull focus, you're still never 100% sure if you are critically sharp and in focus. The other thing I'll say is that whenever you're using these lenses, because they are not critically sharp from edge to edge, if you are not framing your subject in the center of the frame, you will have some natural fall off to your subject, especially if you are working with a locked off shot and you have a subject moving throughout the frame. Now, personally, I think that this can be a creative look and decision. However, I will say that for me personally, I would prefer just a tad bit better sharpness on the edges of the lens. Now, I have been told that the B set is better at this, and that of course the other lenses that have come out since are also better. So it might just be an issue with this main A set, but that is something that I personally experienced. Now, some of you guys do know, I do, on top of shooting videos here on YouTube and creating content for fun, I also do run a video production company. And I cannot say this enough. When I buy gear, not only do I buy it for myself, but I do have hopes that the gear will be able to be used professionally to hopefully make some money back on them, because ultimately this is a very expensive hobby if it's just that. Now, in a professional workflow, these lenses have not been touched. And that's a really hard thing for me to say, especially after a year. You know, there were multiple projects where I thought that these lenses would be able to be used. However, because of the look of them, they don't have a lot of give. You either love the look or it's not quite right. And the truth is that for many projects where I pitched these lenses, I just kept getting pushback where people would tell me they're good, but they're not quite right. And they would want to go with other anamorphic lenses. For example, when we did the car shoot where we shot with a Bolt robot on an LED wall and we were using these lenses, we did technically use these lenses for the project. However, I don't count that as a win because the director, well, he wasn't really happy. See, the truth is that we were actually set to actually use a different set of anamorphic lenses, but on the day of shooting, something fell through with the rental. As a last minute saving grace, I was asked if I could bring in these lenses as a replacement because the director was set on using anamorphic lenses. Now, I brought these lenses in and we used them throughout the production. And it's sort of sad to say that even though I thought the final product looked great, I absolutely loved what came through, especially because I was a little nervous about using anamorphic lenses on an LED wall due to flaring and having so many LEDs, individual lighting sources, what that was going to do to the image. I was pleasantly surprised that the images still looked great, and I was very happy with the final outcome. But the director still was a little down on the sharpness that he was getting out of these lenses. And that seems to be the major issue with these lenses, is the fact that they are just not that sharp. And a lot of professional directors are looking for the anamorphic look, but with a certain level of sharpness, because not only does that become an issue for how your image looks, but also when you're planning on doing any VFX work, it can be a very big issue. And now after shooting that project, I fully understand what the director was looking for. So after having these lenses for a year, what are my final thoughts? Well, the first thought that I have is that I really wish I would have waited and bought the B set. I mean, truth be told, the B set has, in my opinion, slightly better focal lengths. I mean, these are the 45, 65, and 100, and the B sets are slightly different. Now, Remus says that you can pick up the B set and run them in tandem with your A set, but from the tests that I have seen, the B set is so much sharper that I would feel weird switching from lenses from the B set to the A set. The other thing about these lenses is that because of the price point, I still think they're a really good buy. You know, if you can find an A set at a discounted price and you're okay with the lack of sharpness, then I would say, especially if you can get them secondhand, they are a fantastic owner-operator lens because of the fact that you get a chance to really learn. I have said this earlier in the video, but going from spherical lenses to anamorphic lenses is a learning curve. Learning how to frame for anamorphic, learning how you're going to crop in on your image, learning how it works with different camera sensors and different camera types, you're going to quickly learn that there is a whole new world of framing and composition things you need to be aware of when shooting anamorphic. And it's a hard thing to practice with spherical lenses. It's not just as simple as throwing black bars onto a spherical lens and saying, okay, now I know how to frame. You really do need to practice with actual anamorphic lenses. The other thing you're gonna learn very quickly when it comes to working with anamorphic lenses is that there are different types. You have 0.33, you have 0.5s, you have 2x. And so learning which anamorphic range you actually like to shoot with is super important, and how it works with different sensors. The one thing I will say that I have taken away from the year of shooting with these lenses is the fact that, well, even though you think you know a lot, you don't really know that much. There's so much that goes into being a professional cinematographer, and there's so much that goes into just being really good at the craft that you always have to be keeping yourself open to learn more. And that is what I like about these lenses. They're priced well enough where you can actually own them and then practice on a regular basis. Even if it's not being able to be used professionally, they're not going to fully break the bank to where you can pick them up and practice with them. Now, I'm aware that there are tons of other budget anamorphic lenses on the market, but this is really just coming from the perspective of owning this set. Hopefully in the future, I'll have the ability to test other budget anamorphic lenses and sort of give my thoughts on those. But as someone who has owned this kit, I am not disappointed in my purchase. I'm okay with my purchase. Would I have done something slightly different? Yeah, probably if I was buying today. But ultimately, it has been a great year with these lenses, and I can't wait to continue to shoot with them because I think I'll continue to make great images with them, just with the caveat of knowing that they have to be right for the right project, as it is with all gear that you use. But let me know you guys' thoughts on these lenses. Let me know what you guys think of the footage that I captured with these lenses. I love to get your feedback. If you own these lenses or you've been shopping budget anamorphic lenses, also let me know what lenses you've been shopping down below, because I am in the market to check out some other budget anamorphic lenses, because I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to invest in the big boys yet. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.